allowing them to sink more deeply down into place and to observe and to be able to chart and record some of the things that are the most important to them, but that maybe they've lost track of through, you know, our obsession with cell phones and our obsession with this fast-paced world. So these exercises are really meant to slow people down, to reconnect people to place, to hone your observation skills, and to really focus on process over product. So this is not about whether you are an artist and have ever done watercolor before, or have ever drawn or used pen and ink before. It's not about the skills that you bring to it. It's just about the observation and the process of being in that moment of exploring your particular place, or the place where you are. And I think that these kinds of tools, when you open people up to them in community mapping situations, can really elicit all sorts of responses that maybe people wouldn't give at first go, right? So they may know that they like a park, or that they like a green space in their area, or that they really appreciate a certain corner because it's got a cafe, but they don't quite know why. And they don't know exactly what the details are about why that place is special to them. And the more you can evoke that, the more you have a chance of getting them to connect with place, and also of eliciting that political consequence or matter of the work that they're doing, right? Because if we're using community mapping as a kind of social justice tool, we have to have the particularities of why a place is important, and you know what it is exactly that matters to people. And the more you can get somebody to sink down into place and practice those process tools, the better off they'll be able to express themselves, and the better off they'll sound when we're going to people like you know, local councils or development or anything else, and try to convince them that people understand the importance of a place and that they recognize the particularities of it, right? So to me, it's a kind of political gesture, it's an artistic gesture, it's a social gesture, and it's all processual. It's not at all to do with product or what the finished piece of art looks like. So right away, try to let go as much as you can the idea that what you're creating has to look good, because there is no good. There's just about what you were able to learn, and how you felt as you were doing it, and what you were able to see and hear and smell and touch and taste while going through the exercises, okay? So, and I'll just say that I have a few other things that I can share with you. So if anybody wants at any point to come and take a look at books that I have some of Alexandra Horowitz's work on looking, which talks a lot about looking. In the lecture yesterday, I was talking about the work of Marlene Kreitz, who will be coming to our class in a few weeks via Zoom. And this is some of the Newfoundland work that I was telling you about by lecture. So come and take a look at that if you like. There's also a pen and ink sketchbook of Barcelona rooftops, which I picked up in Spain last year, and has some really wonderful pen and ink drawings that really capture the detail and the kind of strange perspectives you can get in Barcelona and the architecture itself. So if you want inspiration, that's a good place to go. If anybody needs another journal to draw in today, please come and grab this if you don't have anything already. And then a few of the exercises that I'll do with you today come from Lynn Baldwin's book called Finding Place. And she's an ecologist at Thompson Rivers University. So she's a scientist by training, but she's also an artist in that she creates these absolutely gorgeous watercolors. And she really uses field journaling as a technique for bringing her students back into contact with the natural world, and teaching them how to observe better, and how to be involved more in the process of observation. And so she has a series of exercises, some of which I'll take from today. So this is a great book to pick up. It's only, I think, $13 if you want a set of exercises that you can go through. And I have a couple of field journals as well that I created when I was doing the field school in Europe back when we could actually travel together. So I made small drawings and just records of the people and places that we talked to while we were in each city. And these are the kinds of kind of combination of text and image that I'll be looking at for you to do today. And I can pass this around. And I think, and you'll see that I have absolutely no artistic capabilities, which is also why I'm advocating process over product, right? Because it's not about whether this is marketable or saleable. It's about the process of remembering a place. And I find when I look through those now, I get a lot more from them than I would from a photograph or from a purely textual recording of a place, because the act of drawing the images makes you remember the day much more. So you might look back on this page that you're creating today in a few months or next year and say, oh, I remember that day. It was just when the rain was coming in. You could see everything from the northwest just starting to come over us, and it was like cold but not too cold. And do you need a jacket? Are you okay? You're good? Just realizing, because I'm going to be wandering around, and I always get hot when I'm teaching. So yeah, it's also this process of memory, right? It's remembering the things that are important to you, but it's also creating a memory through the record of the thing itself, which I think is a really important way of reconnecting and also fighting against that extinguishment of experience. Okay, so the first thing they always start out with when we do these field journaling exercises, first of all, you should know that you're going to do 5 parts. So make sure that you're dividing your page kind of into roughly 5 segments that you can work on during the course of the next couple of hours. Just because some people, they do their contour drawing and it'll go all the way across the page, and that's totally fine, but know that then you're going to be placing other things amongst that contour drawing. So however it turns out is fine. You don't need to keep it in a tiny little square. You can let it drift across the page if you want to, but try to keep some blank space so that you can work entirely on one page today, and it'll make it a more cohesive finished product. So a contour drawing is a blind drawing. And Isa and Nate, you've done this with me before with Landscapes of the Heart, so bear with me while I lead the rest of the class through this. But essentially, when you're doing a contour drawing, there are only 3 rules. The first one is to draw as absolutely as slowly as you can. So you don't want to be kind of sketching a tree, like doing all the branches like this and going really quickly and like a really rough, quick sketch. You want to be tracing every single nodule on the branch of that tree, and your hand should go no more than 1 millimeter a second, and your eye should go at the same speed. So your eye and your hand are connected, and they're following the same train. So as I go around the edges of that branch, that's where my eye is going, and that's where my hand is going. The second rule, you're not allowed to look at your page, ever. Which means that your tree is not going to look like a tree. It's going to look like the essence of a tree, whatever that essence might be. So let go right away of the idea of drawing a Garry Oak tree, because that's not what you're doing. You're drawing the essence of this living creature that's before you, that has all these little craggy corners and looks a little bit like a witch's claw. So don't ever look at your page. The best thing I find is to keep your page all the way off to the side of your body and then look this direction so that you're not tempted, because when we put it down here, then you're like, oh shit, this is nothing like what I want it to look like, right? And then your inner critic starts in, and you're not able to just sink into the thing itself, because you're trying to see the thing in a new way, see it in all of its detail, all of its little cragginess, every single bit of lichen. The best thing to choose for this exercise is usually something close to you. So you might want to choose a leaf like this. And I would think that this leaf would probably take about 15 minutes to go around the edge of and then do some of the middle of. You're going to go extremely slowly. You can do something off in the distance, but it won't be possible, especially if you have bad eyes like me, to get as much detail. So close up is better and smaller is better. I've had people that tried to do a whole like whirl of grass, and then very quickly realized that they couldn't possibly do it fast enough, and that's not the point. It's to do something fast. You want to be slow. So that's the second rule. So go as slowly as possible, don't look at your page. And then number 3, try not to lift your pen off the paper, or try to do it as little as you possibly can. Make sure you do the whole outline of the outside of the thing first. Then if you want to just once reposition, you can reposition and then start to do the interior bits. But try to keep your pen connected to the page as much as possible. So it's not a light sketching, it's a very continuous line that is very attached to the object that you're looking at, okay? So take a second to grab something that you think you might want to spend a few minutes with. And for those of us at home, you can grab either something in your house, or if you want to do this outside, I would recommend that. You could go grab a leaf or a branch or a blade of grass, or anything else that interests you. If your dog will sit still, you could use your dog.
A sleeping cat.
A sleeping cat would be good. Yeah, and then practice those 3 rules, and we'll take about 15 minutes to center on your page, put your pen down, put it off to the side, look at your object, have it in a place where you can see as much of it as you'd like, and then just start and do that connected eye to hand process, where you're going as slowly as possible. And most of us will think that we're going slowly, and then I will go around and say, you're going way too fast. So think that right now. Don't think critic, just think slow down, slow down. Try to keep connected with the thing itself.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Maleea, when did you start journaling like this? Or I don't know if you call it journaling, but...
I took a workshop with Lynn Baldwin back in 2016, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year I went on the field school for the first time, and I taught the techniques to the students, and then we used them throughout the field school. And it was really quite monumental for me to have the chance to draw daily and just to take in stuff through color. So I've done it ever since. I don't do as much as I used to, but because when you're traveling, you have the time to kind of sit and look at things more. But I find the more I can bring it into daily practice, the more centered and the more connected to where I am, I feel.
Yeah. I keep a journal just of writing. Like I've journaled since probably grade 10 for me, which I guess that's like 7 years ago or something. I used to do it every day, but I really like adding like little bits of color or drawings, even though I can't draw at all. But everyone's an artist if you can.
Everyone's an
use
artist.
the pen.
Yeah.
But I really like this. I might take this up.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Color piece again?
Yeah,
okay.
So once you've done the contour drawing, you can feel free to add a little bit of color to it in any way that seems to fit for you. Maybe noting some of the tones of the thing itself. You probably won't be coloring within the lines because there probably isn't the actual shape of a leaf that has a bounded boundary, but that's okay. Add it in the same way that the essence of the thing seems to have appeared on the page.
Great.
That's
But
okay.
it looks kind of cool.
That's okay. I think that looks gorgeous. I love the combination of colors, and I think that you can see where the intricateness of the leaf appears with all of the more black marks, right?
It's also very hard to figure out how to attach
the veins. But that's the point, right? It brings out its own complexity. That's lovely. Capture more of the intricacy of the thing itself, so it's like the thing starts to speak a bit more than it normally would. Okay, so I'll just give you 1 minute to wrap up with the central drawings, and then I want you to do one of two maps that we'll do today as part of your journey up here and as part of your experience here. So this first map has more to do with your journey here. So I want you to take a couple of minutes. You can either walk around and think or just sit and think, and try to remember some of the key points that your journey involved in order to get here. It could have been just from the walk from the trailhead up to the top when we were looking at the licorice fern, and we felt more wind on our faces as we got up higher on the mountain, or it could have been your bike trip here, or parking the car and walking back down through the meadow and then back up again. But think of it in terms of not the things that you did, but rather the events that were happening around you. And the reason I want you to think of it that way is because it gives the things that are around you and the entities that are around you a bit more autonomy and the ability to create their own journey and their own story within your map. So the event might be, I was, when you're walking past a certain point on the trailhead, a bumblebee, the last of the season, crept out of the grass and started to walk across the path. Or it could be that the licorice fern were unfolding around you, or it could be that you heard the traffic around the corner as you parked your bike. Anything like that, to give the autonomy to the place itself and bring those places in as participants in your map. You can draw this map however you like. You could draw it as like a series of points on a line or a circle. You can draw it as individual descriptions with colors to go with them. There's really no wrong way to do this, so it really depends on what you picture in your own mind. But it's the recording of it, the process of remembering those things and then making them into events in themselves, that's the important part. It kind of recenters us so that we're not the center of the journey anymore. There's all sorts of other little centers that are around us that are participating in this whole escapade that we're on. Okay, so you can use your pen and ink. You don't have to worry about not looking. Of course, you can look this time because you're going to want to write, probably. Or you could do this all with just gestures and little drawings, or metaphorical gesturings toward the event itself. There's no wrong way to do this. So take about 10 minutes that way to create some sort of an event map. And you can add color as well, of course, if you like. You might not be completely done your event maps right now. That's okay. You can always keep adding to those as you have time for them down, or when you get home. So we'll move on to a third exercise. I noticed that some of you are already starting to fill up your page, which is great. Feel free to flip it over or add another page, and then you can tape them together at the end. So don't worry if you're overshooting the mark. That's totally fine. That just means you've got a lot to say. So we're gonna. I'll give you a choice between two small exercises for the next one. One is called a sound tapestry, and the other is called a color swatch. You can do either one that interests you. The color swatch is an opportunity, if you're more visually inclined, to really notice what kinds of colors and what hues you're seeing around you. And of course that's going to differ from season to season, so this color swatch is going to give you a really good sense of what the day was like, what season it was, what the temperature was, and just the kinds of things you're seeing around you. So it might be the brown of the guyok leaves and the new green coming up in the grass and the licorice fern, and then this kind of weird hazy yellow-gray sky that we've got going on. And you can just make little boxes of each color using your paints, and feel free to mix on the lids of the paints themselves, and add some water if you need a different shade. And then you can write a description of that color next to it. Where are you seeing that? What is it evoking for you? So that's the one option. And then the second one is a sound tapestry, where it's an opportunity for you to translate a sound that you're hearing into a visual image. So I'll give you an example of how people have done this before. So when you're, say, hearing these crickets that are around us in the grass, which are really, really nice to hear, we won't hear those after the first frost, what image would that look like in your mind when you hear it? Is it a kind of like heartbeat, or is it a kind of swirling tight spiral line, or is it more of a miasma that looks like a cloud? How would you draw it appearing on the page? And then what color would it have over top of it? What color is that sound? So in a way you're kind of experiencing a synesthesia, where you're translating one sense into another. And then you can write a description of that next to it. And then the far off traffic in the distance, what would that look like? And the sound of Wigman sniffing as she walks past you in the grass, what would that look like? All sorts of sounds that you hear, and listen harder and harder, and you might find that you at first hear a couple, and then as you listen more, you'll hear even more, because that sense will be heightened as you pay more attention to it. You can close your eyes if you like to listen more closely, and this is what Vin Baldwin's done. Shapes and colors that occur, and there's again really no wrong way to do this, but it allows you to evoke the sound itself, and then how the sound looks and what color it is, and just kind of how it comes out. So you can take your choice between either of those, the sound tapestry or the color swatches. And it will use a color and take 5 or 7 minutes right now to use a corner of your page or a new page, part of your new page, to add that. You can box it in if you like, if you want to keep it separate. Put it on the page however it looks best to you. for this next one, I'm going to get you to go multimodal. And I know this is a bit dangerous asking you to get your cell phones out, because the temptation to check your text messages or to look at your email can be kind of unavoidable, but try the best that you can not to take your mind away from the place that you've sunk into by doing these exercises so far, and instead go right to some sort of recording app. So if you've got an iPhone, it's probably voice recorder. If you've got an Android or anything else, I think there probably should be some app on there that allows you to record sounds or record ambient stuff around you. So go to that, and I'll get you to take about a 2 to 5 minute walk around this area here, and while you're walking, record your sounds as you're walking. You might want to stop and look at things or poke at things. You might want to stop and see if there's anything moving around you in the bushes. If you do hear anything, make sure you stop and let it make the sound for you. You can go in a circle or just go out and then back, but create some sort of path through this place, somewhat like some of the examples that I gave you in the lecture that I posted yesterday about people who are walking through landscape and recording the places that they're in. So you'll find that you'll get the ambient sounds of the traffic down below. You get the crickets that will probably disappear as you get close to them, but if you stay still long enough, they might come back. And then all sorts of other sounds. Then once you've done that, come back and draw some sort of map and interpretation of what you heard. So it might include a list, or it might include another kind of circular map like you've done before, or it might include the major things that you've heard, but just a memory of the process that you went through while you were doing the mapping with sound. So it's a way of taking your body through landscape, making a mark on landscape with your feet, and making a recording of your travels through landscape, and then making a second kind of memory recording on the page of what you experienced. Okay? And I'll give you a good 15 minutes to do that, so you can wander off in whatever direction you like. And then this recording will serve as a kind of auditory companion to the page that you're making today. What you I find that I use the recording app on my phone almost as much as I use photos. I take as many sound recordings as I do photos. because I find them a really evocative way of remembering place. So I have, recordings of crickets late at night on a Cuban road. I have the ocean sounds in a tiny town in Mexico. I have a band that I listen to in Amsterdam, and it's a way of taking me back into the place really immersively and in a different way than just writing about it. And so if you've had a chance to take a look at some of the sound maps that I posted from yesterday's lecture, you might have found the same thing, that it's a really interesting way of going into a landscape quite immediately and quite deeply. People were submitting recordings of children playing in playgrounds and different street music that they heard, or the whish of car tires on a wet road. And it really evokes a kind of feeling of place, I find. So I like the idea of pairing these sound recordings with a textual and an image-based recording of where you've been and what you've seen and felt. Because to me it's just adding another layer of understanding of a place. So it could be that these might be handy for you to try to do with your community partners. Maybe we can talk about that at the end. But I want to give you just one last quick exercise. And this is one that is meant to help invigorate your writing a little bit, because I find that when we try to describe where we are, if it's something that's hit us really deeply, we end up saying things like, it was fantastic, it was just overwhelming, I don't know what to say, right? And we run out of words very quickly, and or we pair together the very overused combinations that we're used to. So turn your paper over or find a blank page of some kind, and I want you to draw 2 columns. And in the first column, just write down 5 nouns, 5 things you see or hear or sense in the landscape around you. Singular nouns if you can, so it could be the vetch, or it could be grasses, or it could be oaks, or it could be dog, or gravel, or clouds, or whatever. Singular nouns preferably if you can, or plural, actually, either one works. And if you can, write that on the right-hand column if you haven't started already. Don't think too hard about it. Just write down the first 5 things you see, because it's really meant to just trigger what's around you. Okay, you got those? Okay, so then in the first column, take your hand and cover up the 5 nouns that you've just created, so that you can't see them. You can't see what order they're in. And then in that first column, I want you to write down 5 abstractions. So does anybody know what an abstraction is? Okay, so it's an abstract term, as the term kind of gestures toward, that refers to an emotional state, but that doesn't really give you an image. It's abstract in that it's not concrete, right? So an example would be sadness. So it gestures toward a feeling, but do you really know what sadness looks like? Not necessarily, right? Or tenderness, or loneliness, or heartbrokenness, or happiness, anything like that. So they often have NESS at the end of them, but they're always these abstract ideas of emotions or states of being. They're not concrete states. So just write down 5 of those, the first 5 that you think of. Don't think too hard about it. So after each one of those abstractions, you got 5? So after each one of those abstractions, put a colon. Just write in a colon, so the 2 dots. And then I want you to uncover the other side. So then you've got 2 lists. You've got a word, a colon, and then a noun, right? So let's hear some of the combinations that you have. If you read straight across of those 2 lists, what kinds of combinations do you have? Nate?
Oh, mountain is right across from hope.
Okay, so hope would be, and then hope, and then a mountain.
Oh, yeah, I did it backwards.
Okay. Okay, so read the abstraction first, then the colon, and then the noun. So hope, a mountain. So that's good. That's actually that's got some heft to it. What have you got?
I have welcomeness and mountain. I also have sadness and grass, which is like
Okay, so sadness, the grass, or the sad grass, right?
It is kind of sad.
Yeah, it is, right? And, I mean, this is last summer.
Yeah.
This is stuff that's going to be, covered by the snow in another couple of months, or maybe a few days, and otherwise just pummeled by the rain for the rest of the winter, and then will slowly kind of disintegrate into thatch and then grow, and then the new stuff will grow up, but that will never be alive again. So it is a kind of sad grass, right? So that's wonderful. What about you? What's one that kind of evokes something for you? Or seems weird?
Sleepiness, tree.
The sleepy tree, yeah.
Tree.
Yeah, totally, because they're just about to go to sleep, right? So you might at first think about writing the dead grass, right, or the tree losing its leaves, which sure, that's true, and it says what is actually happening, but it's not evoking anything metaphorical, right? You're not creating a metaphor between those 2 terms. Whereas when you say sad grass or the sleepy tree, or sleepiness, a tree, it brings more meaning into both of the terms and creates a metaphorical understanding in the phrase itself, so that you have this sense of language being able to gesture beyond itself, right, and say something more than it normally would. I come from a poetry background, so that's why I'm always trying to think about new ways to say things, and I find that this is a really good way of refreshing language. Did you have any that you were interested in?
In a similar way, I had tiredness and hills.
Tiredness, the far hills, right? And you can see how you can play with the terms so that they turn into a kind of poetry, right? You can either put the colon in, or you can say the tired hills in the distance, but all of a sudden you've got these new ways of expressing these things that you see over and over again, and you might just say the far hills otherwise, right? And so it enlivens your language. What about you guys?
I had happiness and fun.
Happiness and ferns? Oh yeah, that's lovely, because they're just coming up, right? So it totally works. I love that. What about you?
I have
Fearful of the ocean? Yeah, for sure. That's lovely, right? You can think of ways in which it's not that you're scared of the ocean, but the ocean itself might be fearful. Maybe fearful of the land, or fearful of what's coming, climate change, or who knows what, right? You can take that in all sorts of different directions. Yeah. Josh?
Got some really weird ones. One I like is timeless scary oak.
Oh, the timeless scary oak. Yeah, that's lovely, right? So then you've got the idea of the oak tree as this bastion of strength in age, but you're saying it in a different way. So this is just something that you can use when you're writing a paragraph as part of your larger map, in order to try to describe what's around you. And rather than using the far hills and the dead grass and the dying tree or whatever, you can refresh your language and make it new in that way. Ezra Pound used to say, make it new, find a new way of describing things. That's where poetry comes from. And so, but that's also where descriptive language, when you're writing about landscape, comes from, right? You can bring poetics into that as a way of evoking something more and making your reader feel more. I think we all feel a lot more when we hear the sad grass or the tired tree than we do when we hear the dead grass. So you can use that to create a paragraph in your map itself. But I think Since we're pretty much out of time, I want to just take the last couple of minutes to kind of debrief about how this process was for you. And then if you can see this applying to any of your community partners or other projects that you might do for community mapping. We can keep recording or not. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
I'd say therapeutic. It was really like grounding. Like de-stressful, like instead of worrying about what's coming or what's just happened, you're like
You're in the present moment. Yeah, and I feel that as a teacher too. I can totally feel your energy change when you do this. It's why it's one of my favorite classes to teach, because you can just feel everything go. Everybody gets very grounded and very focused in a really nice way, not in a tense or stressed out way. So that's great. I'm glad that you feel that as well. What else?
I really want to start doing a journal like that. Yeah. That's such a cool way to look back at like where you've traveled, or even just your everyday life, I guess, too.
Yeah, I do try to do them. I don't do them as much as I should, but I find the more I do them in daily life, the more rich my daily life seems. Yeah. Keep doing it.
I feel the same as well for starting journaling like that, and just sitting in a place and really like taking the time to notice the little things that are around you. I really like that. I work a lot with kids, so I can see myself bringing these into the future of how the kids in different places, and to bring the energy level and like a happy type of focus where they can be safely still.
Yeah, this strikes me as a really ideal thing to try to practice with community mapping groups of kids, right? Is, you know, how do you ask them what's important to them? How do you get them to note that down and to record that in some way? And this might be one way you could do that. I think there's a lot of possibility for that, for especially working with kids, because their inner sensors aren't as well tuned. So they're more apt to just like get into it, you know, whereas adults, our first thought is, oh my God, I'm going to do it wrong. So, yeah. Asa, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in this notebook I have like the one I did last year, like for the similar class, and so it's really interesting to like compare the two, and like, you know, they both have a very similar like feel and like color scheme, even though it's like totally different drawings and totally different maps. So I thought that was really interesting. Mapping over time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love going back to landscapes that I've seen before, because then I get a new perspective on the same thing. And we did it at the same time of year, I think, too, right? Yeah. What about you guys? How did it go for you? Mushrooming too, actually. It slows me down in a way when I walk through the woods that when I'm just walking for exercise, I don't do.
Yeah, it just seems like a really great way to like connect to wherever you are, I guess. Yeah.
So can you see this being relevant to the projects that you're doing this semester, or to something that you might do for community mapping in the future?
Maybe. Yeah. I would like to see in what kind of way to put it in.
Final thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I really liked the first exercise we did. It was like really good at like forcing me to slow down, and like, my mind's racing at 1,000 miles a minute. So it's like you have to follow like the speed of your. I realized you have to follow like the same speed of your hand as your eyes, or else it completely throws off your drawing. And that's like a cool lesson, because it really connects you to like, or it connected me to place into whatever it was I was drawing. All the like small details. So yeah.
That's awesome. I hope you keep going with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
So if you want to come around and see one another, feel free to put your drawings out, and then we can just kind of circle around and see what everybody else has done, because it's always really nice to see how did somebody else look at these exercises and how did they do the process of each one, because we've all looked at this very differently and come to very different places. Yeah.
Great.
So I think we're good. Yeah. So if you're doing this from home, then feel free to post the work that you've done in the discussion forum as a JPEG, so that then we can participate in the work that you've done as well. And we'll have a chance hopefully to talk a little bit more about how this was for you next class, next Friday, and we can debrief about the ways in which this work might be useful to the community mapping groups that you're working with.
Excellent.